We are
All
recording.
right, looks good. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the April 8th, 2021 meeting of the CCAC. We are not doing a determination of quorum because it's a workshop, so we are not voting. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with the board members. First item is a discussion of the agenda. Does anybody, well, first off, does everybody have a copy of the agenda? Yep, all right. Any discussion items on that one? Nope. All right. Next up would be a discussion of the minutes from last meeting. Does everybody have a chance to review those? Look them over. Any changes, addendum, discussion point? Nope. All right. So that is going to get put onto the stack of things we vote on when we're in person again. We should probably have a conversation at some point about when we're going to be in person again, now that vaccines are more widely available. Make sure that everybody has a chance to get fully vaccinated. So maybe at our next meeting or in a month's time, we can have that conversation and see kind of where everybody is on that. All right, next up is Alachua County EPD County Staff Resources discussion. But Deirdre is joining us and wanted to introduce herself, and we'll just have a kind of a discussion, Deirdre, about your work you're doing and give you a chance to meet us and ask us any questions, and then give us a chance to also meet you. So please go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I have now been working at the county for 4 weeks. We're nearing the end of my 4th week. I was brought on as the county's first equity position. And my charge is to really help the county think about an infrastructure for equity across itself as an organization and across all of the areas that it intersects with citizens through its departments and programs. That's a big charge, and it's going to be a long plan to maybe not a long plan, but a long process to make the kinds of changes that I hope we make. I'm coming to this position from the University of Florida, where I was a postdoctoral associate at the Center for the Study of Race and Race Relations. Before that, I worked in education and nonprofits for about a long time. And I'm excited about the possibility. I am housed in the Office of Climate Change, Resilience, and Sustainability. So I work really closely with Heather Langford, who I see is on this meeting, as well as Sean McClendon, to try to help the county establish a triple or quadruple bottom line in terms of where all of our interests intersect. So yeah, that has a lot to do with climate change. I am very unfamiliar with the work you've done so far, and please consider me a resource as you're going forward to think about equity considerations with what you're doing going forward, and I'll do the same. And hopefully we can build some partnerships that benefit people and the environment. That's kind of it for my spiel. Feel free to ask me any questions if you'd like.
Thank you, Deirdre. Does anybody on the board have any questions or thoughts?
I just want to say, Deidre, welcome aboard. And I think that where we're headed, we're definitely thinking in terms of climate change and the impact that it would have on economic disadvantage. And we want to make sure that equity in terms of resiliency planning is taking place, and we welcome you aboard, especially in communicating out how climate change affects everyone.
I agree. Thank you.
Deirdre, welcome. I'm Mike Castine with Growth Management, and I recognize the challenge that you've got because this is the first time the county's had any sort of an equity position other than aspirational. It's also the first time the county has had any made a real effort to address climate change besides aspirational. So your challenge is just as big as this board's challenge is.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Deidre. And I'm Forrest with EPD. I've been the liaison for this board. Is the short intro that I can give.
Fantastic. Well, Forrest, I'll be coming to meet with you all soon, as well as Growth Management. And for the citizens on the board, thank you for your service. And I'm going to drop my email in the chat right now so you can get in touch with me. Of course, within all of Sunshine State parameters, Sunshine Law. But I'd be happy to be in contact with anyone who's got a question or a thought.
Thanks, Deirdre. Do you have any questions for us?
No, not a one. And that's because I don't know what to ask yet, frankly. So as I learn a little bit more about what you're doing and what we're doing about climate change, then I'll have some questions.
Sounds good. Well, you know where to find us. Thank
you.
Thank you for joining us and for introducing yourself, and welcome on board.
My pleasure. Y'all have a good meeting and a good evening.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, for us, that agenda item where we are is really for EPD and county staff. So
Sure.
if you don't mind taking lead, I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Yeah, this was really, there were questions at the last meeting as we all got to a place to talk about roles and responsibilities and duties, really taking stock of what are some of the resources that are available. So I thought it was a good place basically just to go back over what is there and what is available and just the basic way of what the county has organized to do for our part. And then of course there is the city and GRU as a part of that question as well. But for the county side, of course, there's me is the first part. I've been acting as the liaison and been doing that for about half time. So there's me as a half-time staff. I've been coordinating staff at the county for our county planning group, our climate planning group. That is sort of an informal staff meeting where I've been able to relay your asks and your questions and your research questions to my county counterparts in other departments that are much better at answering a lot of those questions. Outside of that right now, for the details, we also, I absolutely have to say Cayman is our intern and has been incredibly amazing and has produced a lot of products. And then of course, Brandy Woodward at the county manager's office has been doing a great job with being doing a lot of the administrative tasks and taking care of the minutes and note taking. In addition to that, Heather Langford and I and Mike Castine, who have joined us here tonight, along with Cayman, we have started working on just a basic outline for that climate action plan that's based off of what you all have communicated to us thus far, and by looking at a lot of the examples that you all have sent us. And those links, of course, are all in our resources and the documents that we've been passing back and forth. It's something that we're building right now, that we're working on. It's not really something that we're ready to do a presentation on quite yet. But those three of us, that's EPD, Growth Management, and Heather as the Sustainability Manager, are the three major staff leads for the different departments for the county side right now. And Stacy, obviously, Stacy Greco is here tonight too. She is my direct supervisor and boss and has been running EPD for all intents and purposes for a while. So Stacy, maybe you can offer up a little bit more information too on EPD side.
Sure. So I'm the Water Resources Program Manager, and I work closely with Stephen Hofstetter, our interim director, he's really the one that keeps EPD going. But we had a great meeting, Stephen, Forrest, and I this week, just kind of after watching your last meeting and really thinking about the CCAC and this task in front of you, which is hard, and with a lot of different bosses, if you will, with city commissioners, county commissioners, and then the other municipalities and the citizens and everything. And we think you're doing a great job because it's hard to figure out what is that path. But it became, I think it's clear to us that, it is a lot for Forrest. He really is an EPD employee, and this is not just an environmental issue, as we all know. So we are hoping that we can elevate this group and this issue and get more help. Some of you may know, we do have a vacancy with our assistant county manager that oversees, the public works and growth management and involved with EPD and some of these other waste management, some of these different parts that are really involved or should be involved with a climate action plan. So we are hoping that as that position gets filled, that helping with this group and helping with this lift and coordinating all the pieces to write this plan that staff is going to need to do, that new person can help with kind of steering all of those pieces. And now that Heather has joined the team, when this group first started meeting, Heather's position hadn't been filled yet, but she's also in that same group that Deirdre's in, I'm going to get it wrong. Is it the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency? So now that office is really getting staffed up, we're hoping that there's going to be some more staff availability to really start diving in and helping to work on this report with some input and guidance from you as the members. There was the motion at the last joint water and climate policy meeting to get formal representation from the city and GRU. I have not heard if that has happened. I know that there's been some participation in these meetings or attendance in these meetings from City of Gainesville Public Works staff and potentially others, but at this point, it's easier for Forrest and I to talk about what's happening at the county side, because that's where our daily jobs are. So I hope that helps. And Forrest, feel free to bounce back in if I missed anything based on the conversations that we've had this week.
No, thank you very much. The only thing that I can really add is that the response that I have from GRU is that they don't currently have the ability or staff to devote to the CCAC. That was the response following the motion that you're talking about from the policy board. I don't have any sort of official response from the city side.
It's always better to participate in the conversation than to be told later when you weren't a participant, but choose your own adventure, GRU. Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Stacey? I see Stephen, you have your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just want to comment about that response from GRU. I don't know if we have the authority to send back a admonishment, but I think the city commission and the county commission should do so. We need an answer from them as to exactly how they intend to meet net zero sometime, they said, around 2045, which is actually pretty late. I think it's a reasonable request from the energy supply entity for the region to be able to answer that question. I understand that they're under enormous pressure right now. I've been reading a little bit about it, and I'm very sympathetic. On the other hand, it's wholly inappropriate for them to blow us off. And that's exactly what it sounds like they did. Do I interpret that correct, Forrest?
I would be happy to forward the email that was the response. I don't want to interpret.
Yeah,
you know,
okay. All
yeah.
right, fair enough. But I do think that the business of this committee is sufficiently serious, and the future of the county is on the line, you know, in a very real sense, and the future of our children and subsequent generations beyond that, and how the economy of the region will change. I absolutely feel like we need a response from them, and they need to be willing to participate with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, Forrest, can you clarify? I mean, I was at that joint policy board meeting, and it very much sounded like the motion was a you will send somebody to GRU and the city, not if you feel like you have time, would you please? Was that? I mean, that seemed to be the language.
And I can speak to that a little bit, because this has been a problem with the joint water policy. It was always joint water policy, now it's joint water and climate, is that it's a meeting that some city commissioners, some county, and when a motion is made, it's typically to then recommend something goes back to the respective boards, because that group really can't make decisions for the other entities. So sometimes there's a disconnect as to when a motion is made and adopted of then getting it back on the agenda for the respective government. So I think that's what's happening, that I think that the commissioners, you know, that it was a directive that they would like, you know, an official liaison, so that if you have a GRU question, you know who to email, or if you have a general government question, you know who to email. And you know, that the motion did pass, but I just don't think it's gotten on to a city commission meeting for them to then do it, which then, you know, it is a, you know, a staff assignment for GRU and city government.
Thank you, Stacy. I see, Christine, I see your hand, but I know also Hannah has had hers up for a little while. So Hannah, if you want to go, and then we'll jump down to you, Christine. Hannah, I think you're muted still. No?
She wasn't muted. It might be your headphones.
Maybe.
Or the cat muted you.
Yeah, maybe the cat.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay, rad. Cool, yeah. So I just wanted to quickly say, as for like GRU representation and their response, I would say that they probably already consider themselves like engaging pretty strongly with another committee, which is the UAB. And so they're already, you know, caught up in a lot of those discussions over there, and they're being pushed pretty hard as well by the UAB members on a lot of those points. So, I mean, it's disappointing that they, you know, at this point in time aren't interested in sending a representative, or you know, can't exert the resources. But I would say that it's not as though they're able to completely escape these discussions. I was pretty impressed by like the last UAB meeting. So, well, impresses maybe not the right word, but like the UAB is doing a good job of keeping them to some of the kind of promises and resolutions that the city commission has made in terms of their energy goals. But I would really like to see someone from the city. I think that would be really nice. So I hope we get some updates on that soon. And thank you, Stacy, for all the updates as well.
Thanks, Hannah. Christine, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I guess I appreciate what Hannah said, that they are engaged with the UAB, and I'd be curious about how much that will cross-pollinate with what we're doing here. But I do echo what Stephen said, which is, you know, this goes back to our very beginning conversations about buy-in and where everybody is on this. There's really no reason for us to be going down this path and putting all this work in if we create something that is not usable or utilized by key elements in our city and county. So representation from the from GRU, city, et cetera, I think is really important here. It's a major piece of us. Before we move forward, we need to know what level of you know, how much they want to work with us and what the level of buy-in is.
Thank you, Christine. Anybody else? No? Well, this is, I guess,
At
no,
risk,
go ahead, Stacey.
at risk of talking too much at your meeting, you know, we did discuss that, you know, as the plan like starts to come together, you know, an outline and start writing chapters, you know, it could be that once words start getting in onto paper that, and there's things for people to review, that there might be, you know, more engagement at that point when there's concrete things to do. Because I understand as staff, you know, going to more meetings and engagement in more groups can become overwhelming, especially if it hasn't been officially assigned to them yet from the city commission. So I do understand that.
Thank you, Stacey. I had a question for you, actually. You had mentioned that you all on the staff side were actually starting to like draft, or maybe Forrest mentioned this, we're starting to draft a climate action plan. That was one of the big questions that we had. I mean, we are obviously a board of volunteers with our own sort of outside professional and family obligations, and we're also really constrained by sunshine law. So one of the biggest questions that we've had and that we've been struggling with is how to actually draft a document, a coherent document. So it sounds like staff, county staff, is prepared to take that lift actually in terms of like drafting a document. Is that correct? Do I understand that correctly?
That outline has started. It's at a very nascent stage, but yes.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else have any questions on that one? Because I mean, I guess nobody else has questions. The next bit would be to have this conversation about what role EPD staff or county staff in general see themselves playing, and what role we as CCAC see ourselves playing. And I feel like, I know that those are two separate agenda items, but they absolutely intersect, because what staff is able to do is going to help determine what we are going to be doing, and what we are able to do is going to, in large part, determine, you know, what we ultimately are asking of staff. And we want to make sure that we're coming up with a plan that everybody can be happy with, that everybody feels is sustainable and doable in the long haul, because this obviously is not going to be just a super short project. This is something that we're going to be continuing to do month after month and probably year after year. So we want to get started on the right foot with, I mean, obviously a plan is going to evolve and change as we go forward, but we want to make sure that what we start with is solid. So I guess the question component is, what role do EPD staff see themselves playing, and what do you want from us, from CCAC?
I think the outline is starting to break itself out into sectors, segments, as we all have talked, to where different staff can start taking stabs at different sections. That being said, it's also, I don't know, maybe Mike can help me out with this a little bit. We're also looking at it from sort of our different expertise. So where I may be looking at climate action plans, looking at sort of this broader planning structure for climate, and working into more specific language or approaches as that in regards to green infrastructure or things that you might think are more really environmental protection department focused. Also reaching out to growth management to look at the plan itself and how that fits in with our comprehensive plan and existing plans. I don't know if that has gotten to, I don't know that anybody at growth management has broken that down into individual segments or sectors yet. we just got started on. But you can see how some of these things, are starting to break themselves out into segments, but also from a staff approach, we're still trying to keep it in all one cohesive, coherent plan. Where I think we will keep coming back to you all is in those individual segments, of course, once we get, for say, the vulnerability analysis that you all have discussed already, we can bring those back and talk to you all about how you see that fitting into this larger action plan. When we have language that is ready for green infrastructure, how we are going to do our land management based off of the climate action plan, then EPD can come and talk to you all about that and ask, how do you all continue to see this fitting into the larger climate action plan? Of course, that's again just from our county side, and then that starts to get really interesting when we bring the city in to do the very same task for their staff, and then what that looks like on GRU's side too when it breaks out into their water, wastewater, energy production staff, et cetera.
Yeah, and to follow on Forrest just a little bit, and Forrest, stop me when I go astray, because I probably will. But his point is the environmental perspective and the climate perspective through the EPD lens. Yeah, when it comes over to growth management, for example, that's where it begins to intersect with the built environment. So how do we develop our transportation network in a way that still will provide resiliency? How do we make sure that we can allow our community to develop so we don't have to rely on automobiles for all of our transportation and those sorts of things? And some of that's in the plan, but a lot of it needs to be articulated more. And so Forrest and I were talking about this generally as we're beginning to try to get our arms around the climate action plan outline. And so maybe to answer your question a little bit, Megan, the way I see it, until this committee decides something different, is right now staff's job is to listen as you guys develop your vision for the climate action plan. We put it into an outline form with the county's lenses, knowing where we, first of all, where we have the ability to affect change, and also where we don't, or where we use the climate action plan to look at another partnership organization like GRU or the city or whatever. So in one respect, maybe perhaps only at this stage, is you guys are there to develop this overarching vision. Staff will turn that vision into an outline and a document that kind of works within the county's structures. And then from there, as you mentioned, evolving, it will evolve. And so we're at the like you said, we're at the beginning of a long journey.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you both, Forrest and Mike. Anyone from CCAC has some questions or follow-up on that? That's frankly more detailed than we've gotten before, and I am very grateful for it.
Thank you.
Maybe on CCAC? Because we're talking basically, guys, about like what our future role is going to be. So, and the folks who are going to be supporting us primarily, at least in the beginning, are going to be staff members from EPD and from the county who are represented here tonight. So we want this to be a partnership. So we want to make sure that we each understand what our role is going to be, and that we're all comfortable with that.
And
Yeah,
I can
Steven.
add to it, it's not just EPD, Mike Castine's here with growth management, and Heather with sustainability, and Gail Mowry with the city of Gainesville is here also. So feel free to jump in, Gail. We're talking about like what staff can contribute, if you want to discuss that. Another role that I think, as an outline comes together more, obviously sharing that to see, is this outline even, what you envision, and then starting to pencil in who we think will draft that, and then also like additional resources for that. If it's about, for example, resilient landscaping, that's something I would probably write, but y'all might know of other experts that I should talk to, because I can talk to them. I don't have the sunshine limitations, and get their input when working on that section. So that's another way I think that you can help in helping us engage with others. And then obviously reviewing all those sections and helping, digest it and reorganize it.
And current research, which you all have really, really helped all of us with too, pointing us to the right directions, the right things that we need to be reading and looking at. As we've said, the county hasn't really staffed up to approach climate change. So a lot of us are still doing a lot of learning also. And you all have had a lot of influence there.
I do like this approach. I think we all can say that it gives us a little bit more guidance. I like the approach of you guys giving us the outline rather than us throwing things out there and not knowing if it matches up with what some of your documents and some of your policies are. So I like this approach. I think that we could be more useful in working in areas and evaluating areas that match up with the big plan.
Thank you, John. Stephen, I thought you had your hand up. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that is there a systematic way that we can bring scholarship to the EPD?
Sure. How do you mean systematic?
Well, I feel like that there's the faucet of peer-reviewed information that's being produced on a daily basis, literally, is like a fire hose. I mean, it is truly astonishing. Some of us make it our living, to make it our professional reality to keep up with that stuff. I literally read a dozen papers a day, not in their entirety, but sufficiently to understand what points are being made. And a wide variety of journals are now relevant to the questions that we have at hand. Is it possible for any of us that have certain levels of expertise, like Megan or Megan Walker or Megan Innes, who both have different perspectives on the scholarship that we need to work on, or Amanda for that matter, or Hannah for that matter, with her emphasis on carbon issues, or myself. Can we bring to you information in the form of a Q&A and a PowerPoint one-on-one with the EPD, or is that a violation of the Sunshine Law? I think it would significantly enhance your ability to develop planning and understand where we're coming from.
I don't see an issue with that at all. Stacy, do you? No, I don't think.
As long as it's one of you, I mean, it can be a whole room full of staff. I think it can just be one of you, though.
I stand ready to do so to the extent that you think that I would be useful.
That sounds great. That's extremely appreciated. Yeah, and all of the resources that you can point me, our staff too, that we can keep staying engaged and involved in are very much appreciated, and is a huge part of the time that we're devoting to it right now. Well, I will certainly follow up with you, Stephen.
I think also that goes for any of the rest of us. Also,
and everyone.
If you want to step in, if your area of expertise, if you are able to put together a presentation or a list of resources that's just kind of call it a primer, on the things that are really most important to get started. I think that'd be great, because we do, I mean, we were all chosen for this board, and we do have actually quite a healthy range of expertise. So we can serve as a resource. Cayman, I see you have your hand up. You want to go ahead?
Thank you. My suggestion would be, once we get like the CAP outline organization settled, would be to potentially have meetings dedicated to one of the pillars or goals for the CAP, and then having you guys review, like before that meeting, be able to send out like the main topics or goals for that specific section of the CAP that we have so far, and having like the experts that we know and the contacts we all have, letting them know about this and having them come out to these meetings. Just like an idea that I think would be helpful. Like that's obviously maybe a few weeks out or a few months out potentially, but I mean, I think that would be a way to achieve what Stephen was talking about, if I'm not mistaken.
And Cayman, thank you, because that was another thing we talked about in our meeting, which Cayman wasn't at, that potentially a way to move forward, just hearing that everyone's kind of overwhelmed with the amount of meetings and getting stuff done between meetings, is, you know, maybe a different model is to meet less frequently. And then when there is a meeting, it might be a longer meeting that's maybe even like in the daytime with laptops out. And it's more of like a workshop, really like editing together and talking about this document, which has been a challenge for you guys with the sunshine. So, you know, maybe if you're not trying to meet every 2 weeks in the evenings, maybe a half-day meeting every quarter where it's really diving in and you're digesting materials and debating it with each other might be a good model, and that can do what Cayman was talking about too.
Thank you, Stacey. Yeah, that was going to be one of the questions actually I had for the committee, was meeting frequency, because it seems like it has been, you know, originally we kind of went with, you know, trying to do 2 per month in order to like really chug through, but we've run into these limitations of, if we are self-generating the topics and the content for those meetings, that's tough to fit into, you know, busy professional lives, and obviously we can't collaborate with each other outside of meetings to put together, you know, more comprehensive content. So that was going to be a question. We could go to it now, unless anybody, you know, kind of wants to head in a different direction. But in terms of meeting frequency, do we jump back down to once per month? Or, I mean, frankly, I really like Stacey's idea of having potentially a longer meeting that's kind of more of a workshop once we have content, because it seems like right now the content is still being created. So we don't really have something to review at the moment. So maybe we could use maybe go back to once a month meetings and keep them, you know, shorter, maybe keep the same time slot since it seems to work with everybody. And that can be kind of brainstorming sessions on particular topics. And then once a quarter, try to have a longer meeting when there's or tentatively once a quarter, but when we have sufficient content for us to really chew through and discuss. What are y'all's thoughts on something like that, or an alternative? I just feel like that rigid twice per month schedule is burning everybody out, and we're not really accomplishing a whole heck of a lot at the moment. But I'm only one voice, so open to hearing what the rest of you have to say. Christine?
I guess if you all don't mind, just going back a little bit and talking a bit more about the outline and kind of revisiting what we were talking about just a minute ago about the outline, where that comes from and how that's going to look. Because I got it, but I'm thinking maybe I don't have it. So if someone can just re-explain kind of where we've landed right now, that would be really helpful for me. It's been a long day.
Yeah, just a brief recap on I think where we got to with that is, you know, for the county side, county staff, we are starting to put together a basic outline. That outline has main sections of it that you all have identified in our previous meetings as being important. Where we are starting to flesh that out is separating that out to different departments or staff that have the expertise that can start filling that out. Where we can fill that out, I think then we can come back to you all to get your input and advice. Where we can't fill that out, again, we can come to you all and say, do you know where we should go next? What is your opinion and advice about this sector or segment? Just a very short version. Does that make a little more sense?
Far as what is one of the sectors, if you will, like what's an example?
So food security, you all have talked about. Energy, one of the big sectors. We've gotten, I think, to 11 different major topics right now. Green infrastructure, waste, zero waste.
Okay.
So what's going to happen is the outline's going to get, I'm assuming we'll see it, and then the outline gets populated, and you'll ask for input and assistance from us, or just guidance, expertise, etc. At what point do we determine? What actions would be taken? So I'm assuming this outline is getting a lot of the facts, the content, the things that are either existing resources in this area or things that you see as potentially helpful resources. And then I'm assuming all this kind of comes together, and then we all work together to create action items and short-term, long-term, goals, that sort of thing. Is that kind of?
That's a great question. Some of the action plans will have, an entire just action section. Some of the plans out there have them built in within the different sections. Right now, as just the basic outline, we are keeping track or being mindful of where are we trying to get to as far as action items in each one of those sections. So that's just in terms of the outline for staff, keeping us mindful of that. All of this does need to be pointed towards specific actions that we're going to take. That right now we're looking at that on a segment or a sector by sector basis. Great question, because certainly we can get lost in that and forget about specific action steps.
It may be also that as the outline develops and the climate action plan, the committee's settled in its role, the outline develops. Well, there are a variety of ways to do it. You may want to identify short-term, medium, and long-term goals within the plan, or specific sectors that are addressed first over other sectors. I mean, it can be an even a lot of things. That's kind of where your vision comes in.
Well, I guess I want to say I really appreciate you all picking up and moving forward with this. That's a huge help. I think I'm not alone in feeling like after the last meeting, I was feeling a little like concerned and a little lost. So I'm really glad to hear that there's movement on this and that you all are taking such action on it. Thank you.
Yeah, here. I see Amanda and Stephen both have their hands up. I'm not entirely sure who was first. Amanda looks like she's first in the queue. Stephen, were you first? No, okay. Amanda, why don't you go, and then
Okay.
Stephen next, please.
Okay. Well, I just want to echo what Christine and John said, that this is a big undertaking for the staff to do this outline and, create it with us. The way I see CCAC is that we're definitely here for guidance and content building, review, and communication. Not just that, but I see that those 4 areas are a big part of our roles. And a while back, we kind of had divided up in the communication. Some of us were communication and some of us were technical. So I hope that that can still continue, not that there weren't people that could overlap, because we talked about how overlap might happen. So I hope that when there's more to an outline, we'll be consulted, I guess, if it overlaps with our expertise, and then maybe we'll be asked for some of the content building or review. Obviously, we could be, I guess, be part of areas that aren't our expertise, but it just seems that we've all expressed that we have a lot going on in our lives. So maybe we should stick with our expertise. And then if we can do above and beyond that, then that would be great. And then Megan, you asked about frequency. So I definitely think that once a month while we're figuring things out is good, but I think that I would be open to changing that if our level of involvement needed to change, or if we had more work or had less work, something like that. So I would be open to going back to once a month, but then also being able to be flexible as well if needed. So that's how I'm feeling.
Thanks, Amanda. Just to kind of build on what Amanda said, I would also ask that as that outline is put together and the content is put together, obviously we do all have our own areas of expertise, but I think some of the best insights come when people are brainstorming outside of just their own area of expertise. So I would ask that that you do bring that content to us, and not just to the people who are expert in that, but that we open it up to the committee for the chance to really have some of those more innovative out of the box ideas that come from people who are not embedded in a particular discipline, have the chance to really look at it and think about it in a new way.
Yeah, I think for our part, your involvement is essential. The ultimate goal at the end of all this should be that there is a document, a plan that staff feels comfortable supporting moving to the joint policy board, and that you all feel comfortable moving forward. And then the decision makers adopt it and send it to their various commissions. So we have to all work together to get to where we have a joint document that we support.
Thanks, Forrest. Stephen, you've been patient. Please go ahead.
No worries. There are a number of technological opportunities here that can help streamline our process and help us work through the various options we have. One thing that I have in mind is something that's used at the University of Arizona that's called the Decision Theater. It's a series of 3 really big screens that have rear projection slides on them that are prepared by various experts in certain areas. And it allows the decision makers to sit in an auditorium around a big circular table and watch different scenarios play out on those screens. They can, for example, assess the role of buying a cheap piece of dirt out on the edge of town and developing mass transit to and from, as opposed to redevelopment of the inner part of the city. So there is such a facility at the University of South Florida. And it existed in 2007 when I used it with the School of Natural Resources and the Environment. I think we could develop something relatively on the fly here so that it would meet the criteria of the Sunshine Law and actually help us reach a richer understanding of what our options actually are, so that we could take maybe a day retreat out at Austin Carey or someplace and have multiple screens set up where we could go through different aspects of a particular part of the problem that we're facing. And that would help us gain a richer understanding that's more comprehensive across the committee, as well as for the city and county professional staff that could attend.
Thank you, Stephen. Has staff, I guess, Forrest or Stacy or Mike, have you all done anything like that in the past? Are you familiar with that sort of process?
I've done scenarios, I'm forgetting the name of it. I've actually, through NERLI, the Natural Resources Leadership Institute, doing, where you kind of act it out. You have two different groups and you do scenario planning, and, you know, one is kind of like best case scenario, one's worst case scenario. It's something low tech, but kind of that similar, getting the creative juices flowing. So, I mean, that's something, I've done, and there's definitely people locally that have the expertise to run one of those that can be a helpful exercise.
Thank you. Megan, I see your hand is up. Please go ahead.
John, had you been waiting to say something? I feel like you unmuted a while ago.
No, go ahead, Megan.
Okay, I just didn't want to jump ahead. So I know we're not to that point yet since we're just in outlining, but I would like to offer to put together a like 45-minute presentation on our best practices in how we communicate about climate change, because I think keeping that sort of thing in mind as we're writing this document will be much easier than trying to go back and apply the strategies post hoc. And so it doesn't have to be the next meeting, but maybe in the next 2 months or so, I'd like to offer to do that for the committee so we can think about how to strategically talk about these things in the plan as we move forward.
Would you like to do that for staff also, similar to what Stephen was saying?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to put this together for whoever in the city or county would like to participate. I may bring on one of my colleagues from NOKI to help give the presentation, so you don't just have to listen to me the whole time, but we've got a lot of research-based best practices that we've spent over 10 years developing that I would love to share with everybody so we can be strategic in how we put all of this together.
That sounds great. Megan, you mentioned getting together with one of your colleagues. So if you want to just be in touch with Forrest, I guess, as you work out schedules, to let us know a time that works best for you and for your colleagues.
Sounds great. And I was going to say, and in the email Forrest sent this week was also a document with some of our resources from NOKI, and I will also pull our, they're kind of cagey about how they developed these because they don't want people to steal their methods and things, but we do have a few peer-reviewed articles that I'll be happy to share as well.
Thank you. So I mean, it sounds like that's honestly a really good next step, especially with the intent of incorporating best practices from the very beginning. As we move forward, be thinking about that. So as we're, you know, as you all are drafting the outline and drafting the components, we want to make sure that that is worked in, so we're not wasting time doing something that's ineffective.
Yeah, because I think as we begin to write from the outline, it'll help us think about how to organize things and what kinds of things we need to absolutely make sure we include so that this is as effective with communicating with the public and with our colleagues in the county and the city and whoever wants to read it.
Those action items start to reveal themselves too.
So does anybody else have from the committee have something to add up until this point? No? Okay. So my question to staff who are on the line, what do you want or need from us in the near term?
I mean, I feel like, and Forrest, correct me if I'm wrong, because you've been the most engaged, and Mike, I mean, I feel like you've provided already some good feedback, and we need to, on the county end, kind of see, you know, rally the troops. Who else do we have that we can really start to allocate some sections to? I don't know. I mean, is the ball in our court for us to kind of start to fill in that outline a little bit more and then get that back to the CCAC? Is that one of the next steps?
I would say so, since you all have been supportive of that yes, now on the county side, it's filling out that outline more to where we can get you all something to look at.
Sounds good. I mean, John made a really good point earlier that it's a lot more efficient for you all, since you know the structures, you know kind of what resources you have, you also understand the departments and what levers are available to move in terms of climate action planning. It's a lot more efficient for you all to say, hey, ask us questions and us to give it back so that you create the framework and we help fill it in, rather than us just kind of throwing things and seeing what sticks. So I would just ask if there are areas, also like Stephen mentioned, you will know kind of what our areas of expertise are. So if there's something where you think that one of us has information that would be useful, or if you want to tap one of us and say, hey, we'd really like to get up to speed on this topic, is that something you'd be comfortable doing? I would say please reach out and ask us that. Ask us for those resources, ask us for our expertise, and then as the outline moves forward and as you're filling pieces in, please bring that back to us. I just feel like we don't, because of the constraints of the Sunshine Law, because we are not familiar with the inner workings of the county, of the city, it'll be more effective for you all to take that role on and let us kind of provide some of the guidance and the vision, I think is how Mike put it.
I mean, do you think it makes sense, if this group is going to meet in a month or so from now, do you think that's a realistic timeline to have, it's not gonna be a final outline, but at least, some bones of where we're going and who we think fits where? Do you think that's realistic for us?
I do. I definitely do. And I wouldn't want to go much beyond that without checking back in to be sure that we're all on the same, path.
Sounds like we have agenda item number 1 for next month's meeting. Does anybody else have anything to add before it feels like the conversation's kind of winding down a little bit, but I want to give us all a chance for any final conversations or clarifications. Nope. All right, well, thank you very much, Forrest, always, Stacy, Mike, Gail, thank you all for joining us. And honestly, on the staff side, thank you very much for being willing to pick this up. I don't know if this was part of what you all were planning to do or not, but it is a heavy lift. You heard how kind of overwhelmed we were feeling with that. So very sincere thanks for picking that up and working with us in this way that allows us to use our passion and our expertise and let that be leveraged in a process where you all, where your strong suits are also able to shine in terms of putting together this document and really understanding how the county and how the city work and how we can work within that framework to create a resilient community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think and hope it'll make it a little bit more digestible for everyone and more efficient. Also, as just a reminder, a potential agenda item number 2, Commissioner Alford would like to do a presentation.
Yes. So yes, maybe that, I feel like we could probably do both. Do you know how much time she thinks that she would need?
It was not very long. It was the same presentation that a lot of you saw at the Joint Policy Board. I think it was about 20 minutes, Stacy, maybe 45 minutes altogether for it to include the conversation.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. I absolutely want to invite her in. I'm grateful that she wants to come and speak with us. So maybe that we make that the first item, especially since, I mean, her discussion on energy efficiency is going to fit in with at least one or two of those chapters that you talk about for the outline of the cap.
And I do see Gail unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to add? Sorry to put you on the spot, Gail. Good to see you.
No, it's okay. I didn't want to interrupt. It sounded like Megan was getting ready to close out. I didn't want to interrupt, but I'm with Public Works with the city. I particularly am in the stormwater team. So I have been listening in, and I'm sure you guys saw my name throughout the meetings. I think I've only missed one. And I have learned a ton from just sitting in and listening to the meetings. We are going to be, our plan is, at least for stormwater, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about commitment at other levels. I have made inquiries, but I haven't gotten any confirmation of anything yet. But we're planning on partnering with Shane and whatever he needs for the stormwater component of that vulnerability assessment that he was working on. So that's where I'll be participating in that, because that's actually what you guys are dealing with now. We're talking about, we're doing a comp plan update. I don't know if you guys are familiar with our comp plan update. It's a 6-month process that's being facilitated. We've finished month 2, and it's basically looking at how to specifically address our comp plan for development to identify those communities in need and make sure that development is improving services. And we're focusing on low income, high poverty communities and trying to make those situations better. So I'm focusing again on the stormwater, but there's like 4 different teams. Probably each team has 15 to 20 different people. And but this has been really interesting because the climate change is part of that overall comp plan consideration as well. So a few of you might be hearing from me at some point, because we may look for some sort of outreach within the teams on how to engage the community on certain aspects of that comp plan update. And I'll know more. They have some planning meetings going on this week and next week, and then we'll all start reconvening. Generally, we meet every 2 weeks. But anyway, I just wanted to say hello. I have been listening in. Unfortunately, I'm just stormwater, and I know you guys, a lot of this stuff that you guys talk about has to do with energy and GRU, and unfortunately, I'm not there. But I have reached out and I've asked a couple people about, is there going to be some sort of facilitator identified from the city, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't heard anything, Forrest. I thought you would probably hear something before I did, but I have been trying to get that message up. So maybe at the next the joint meeting, maybe Stacy, it would be a good idea to ask again, because I haven't heard anything. But anyway,
thank you, Gail.
Anyway, but thank you all. It actually, I've learned a lot listening to the meetings.
It makes me feel better that you being on city staff haven't been able to move a whole lot more than I have. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Gail, and thanks for chiming in. I definitely have noticed your name, so it's good to, I don't know, meet you via Zoom anyway.
And also, Shane and I are, we'll definitely keep reaching out with you to work on filling out this stormwater portion of the outline. So thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. So if there's nothing else on that. I don't know, Stacy, Mike, if you all were planning to stick around and hang out and talk with us. If so, you are absolutely welcome to. If you all want to get on with your evening, then I'll say thank you again very much here and let you all go. And
I'm gonna stay, but I did see that Stephen had his hand up.
Yeah, Stephen, go ahead. Yeah, good catch.
I just wanted to say that I'd like to encourage the concept of mainstreaming. I think we should mainstream climate change in absolutely everything the city and the county does. You don't lay a pipe, you don't plan a subdivision, you don't lay a wire, you don't do any of that without considering the sustainability implications and climate change. And I think that probably is not built into the culture at this point of time. So you've got planning processes that are underway with developers and that don't include climate change as a central element, would be my guess. I don't know that that's true, but I would like to suggest that you step back for a minute and you say, whoa, let's hold our horses here. Because if we're going to be plotting out doorsteps down Newberry Road, and then zoning regions for commercial versus residential and other things like that, then we need to ask ourselves, what are the implications for disaster risk reduction? What are the implications for managing extreme storms, extreme water events, et cetera, all of the things that come along with that. Now, I know that typically that is part of the process, that you consider those things, like when you're laying storm sewers and you're putting in pipes and that sort of thing. But there are many other aspects that climate change puts a new wrinkle on the entire thing. So that's just my 2 cents at this point. And now I really will shut up. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else? All right. With that, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is the communications planning. This is picking up conversation that we had a couple of meetings ago. And Christine put together a really excellent outline and summary of the conversation that we had. Does everybody have that? Have a copy of that? You'll get it? All right. So I don't know who wants to kind of take up leading that discussion. It has kind of been back and forth between Megan Ennis and Christine. We're both kind of tag teaming that at the last meeting. Does one of you feel comfortable picking that back up again this evening?
Christine, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you put together and if there are holes that we need to start filling?
Yeah. So what this document is basically, as we were talking at the last meeting, I created large categories that I think we need to include in a communications plan. Some of this may shift with the updates with what's going on in terms of our role in this. So this was made based on the idea that we were doing the bulk of everything. So understandably, some of this may shift, but the idea behind it was there's certain things that as you go into this, and if we really are sincere about wanting to engage stakeholders, not only for getting input as this plan is created, but also with disseminating this plan and getting it out there once it's done, we do need to have some type of communications plan. So what this does is it has these larger categories, including, the first one is stakeholder identification. And these are the stakeholders that we talked about at the meeting. What I see with this is we really, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I like to look at where we're trying to go. What are we trying to do here? And then work backwards. So, really who do we want to be affecting? Who do we want to have using this? Who do we want to have integrating this into their decisions, et cetera? And so create a table with stakeholders. And that includes what these stakeholders, why it's important for them to be engaged, what they need to know, and then specific groups. A lot of times when you start with stakeholder identification, people jump right in and they start naming groups very quickly, and it's a natural thing for us to do. But I would encourage us to go bigger picture and say, okay, who are the big groups that we need to talk with, and then work it down into specific groups we need to engage with. And again, some of this could shift based on our shifting role. I'll just kind of walk through this, and then Megan, I'll kind of hand it over to you for your comments and your thoughts on this, since you've done this a lot. But what are the goals we have of this? And we really identified as a group, we came up with 3 things. One was awareness. We really want people, as we create this, as we go through this process, we want people to understand the big picture. We want them to be able to connect the dots, that explanatory chain that was discussed. You know, they need to understand how all this connects. We need to, oh, there we go. We
Sorry,
need to,
I thought this might be helpful for people who don't have it.
that is, thank you. So awareness, information, getting information from people. What are their concerns? What are their priorities? What guidance do they want to have? You know, and where are their gaps in available information? When we started all these conversations, we were really, a lot of us were really gung ho on making sure that this really was meeting the needs of our stakeholders. So these are some things that we would need to have. Scenario or response, to me, this is a big one. This is what Stephen was talking about. You know, what are responses to scenarios? What would, and I bulleted this out as what would trigger a concern or action? What is the limit of acceptable change or risk that a decision maker, a community, an organization, a citizen would be willing to take? And then if something happened, then what actions would they be willing to take? So this is that. So we put all these things together and we say we want to do these things. What actions would people actually be willing to take, from the citizen level all the way up through the community design, development, and decision-making level? What solutions, policies, actions, strategies would be acceptable or unacceptable? What actions would people want to see happening within our community? I think this is a key piece of what we're going to be, what I think we should be collecting from people. And then I have a section on outcomes. What are we actually going to do with this information? This is the so what. I'm not necessarily a subject matter expert in any way with this, but one of the things I really like to do is the so what with stuff. So we do all this work. So we put all this information in there. So we put all this time and energy with all these staff members, and we have all this resources from incredible experts. So what? If it's not useful and it's not something that we can actually use, then we've just created something to sit on a shelf. So I really think that we need to be clear on what we're actually going to do with this information and how it will be utilized with our key stakeholder groups. And then from there, I always, when I do a process like this, I like to have a promise to the stakeholders, so the people who do take their time. And I think that now includes us. The CCAC is part of this, right? So what's the promise to us and to everybody that we're engaging with? What's going to be, when we go through this process, what are people going to get out of it? Those that put their time in and their expertise in, and what are we saying when we're sitting down with local experts, et cetera, and asking them for this information, what are we promising that we'll actually do with it? So fleshing this out. And then this is something that really I was impressed with when we were last meeting, the stakeholder outreach strategy. You know, we do need to have a branding and marketing and outreach initiative here. We need to have expert guidance on how we do these things. We do have a lot of expertise within our group, but I think that there needs to be a dedicated effort. I look at what's going on now with the infrastructure initiatives at the federal level, and all the outreach and branding and work that's being done there, and it's impressive. Obviously, that's on a much larger scale, but you know, we need to sell this thing, and we need to get people on board with us. So, and again, it goes back to, you don't want this sitting on a shelf. So, and then the last thing is, I always like to have timelines, et cetera. So if we can tag a timeline with anything, that's great. But I think this sounds like a lot of this is going to be maybe out of our hands in terms of some of the timelines. So that's the summary of the notes I took from the last meeting. And yeah, Megan, if you want to jump in and give your thoughts again, since you've done a lot of this before.
So I think that was well done, Christine, and thank you so much for putting that together. And, you know, as far as my work goes, it's more about how we talk to people. So I am nowhere close to being an expert on branding and things like that, but this that you've put together will be so important to help us identify our audiences, because how we talk about this will vary depending on who we're talking to. So by having very clear sets of stakeholders that will help us think about how we put our messaging together in order to best communicate to the different groups. So I think you are absolutely right, thinking about our outcomes so that we can figure out who the appropriate stakeholder groups are. So then we can tailor our messaging to each of those groups will be really important.
Can I hop in here with a question real quick? I mean, Christine, you mentioned that this was based on last week or last meeting where we sort of had a different idea of what our roles were going to be. Can we toss this to kind of to staff and ask what were you all planning to do, or if there's another department, that would be, kind of more, whose purview is more community engagement, what their role would be, so that we can understand what is needed of us, what our role really needs to be in terms of the community engagement component.
Yeah, I think, something as robust as this is something that would have to be, obviously we'd have to take it to other staff to see what part could be played, or if this needed to be something that was, maybe something completely separate.
I mean, one thing when I think of the CCAC and communications is, especially as we start to work on the plan and the actions, is like outreaching to get feedback and, helping to figure out exactly what Megan was just saying, like, what language do you use? How do you craft those actions in those sections that might make them more attainable? I think for outreach, once like a plan is created, is that one of the asks? Like, then how is it marketed? Like, how do you get it to the people that need it? Historically, when we've done things like this, I've kind of done it internally, and we do have a communications office, so they can help us. They could help with some branding. They could help with like some logoing or imaging and things like that could go into a document or a website and stuff like that. I think we could get some help from that. The county does have a really active Facebook group. You've probably interacted on it. It's got 90,000 followers. I use it a ton. And I'm constantly told to just pave the roads instead of focus on water stuff. But it really does hit a wide variety of our citizens. So that can be a way to get input and to get materials out. And I'm not sure if that's answering the question. I mean, I could see Heather's office and Sean, like sustainability, that group helping also to make sure that something, looks professional and has some branding and help get it out to different groups.
I'm wondering if we'll be able to partner with Deidre to talk about how do we access some of the groups who may not otherwise be reached through our traditional means, because we want to make sure that we are reaching all of the groups and not just those who are otherwise engaged with the county.
I mean, I think that's a great idea. I was super excited to see her be here today, and it's kind of been a missing link for us. So
yeah, this is Heather. That's exactly the role that Deidre is here to play, and I know she's excited to engage with the group and be a part of this. So definitely, as you're thinking about things like that, we want to include her and engage her.
And also, I think a place to continue to do that engagement too is as we come back to you for review of these different sections or segments, you all can go out to your different individual community groups and remind them, tell them. We as staff can also reach out to our community groups that at this next meeting, we're going to be discussing, whatever, what have you, sector. Make sure that you come and engage and be a part of it.
Yeah, the way I've done this in the past with projects is is having a communications plan and an implementation plan and a series of, and it's obviously different now because of our ability to meet and et cetera, but just have a series of planned meetings, discussions, et cetera, to engage the different stakeholder groups. It sounds like we're going to be doing things different. So I'll have to, I think we'll need to rely on you all for guidance on what you want, how you see this working. Again, this was made last meeting, and things have shifted. So I think having a better idea of, how much we're going and who we're going to be engaging with, or how we're going to be engaging, I think would be helpful. Are we, like you said, inviting people to come to, if it's a subject matter that we're discussing, are we inviting groups to come and discuss it with us or provide input, and how's that look, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I guess I'm not making sense right now, but I think that finding out from you all what you think, what you think of this outline, and what you think, which parts of it we would actually be using. Are we making a formal communications plan? I guess that's also a question. Are we doing that at this point?
I wonder at this point if it would be more helpful to have a formal communications plan for how to be soliciting information and kind of as we're working on the plan, rather than thinking about how we're getting the plan out once it's written, or just a little bit more of the like outreach and engagement during this process. At this point, but it's just my thought right now.
And Stacey, that makes a lot of sense, and I mean, that's helpful. And I think that you can definitely use something like this to figure out who you want to solicit things from. But I think that probably understanding really what are we trying to, how do you all see this plan? How do you all see the end result of this plan? I guess that's what would be helpful too, in terms of practicality and who's using it. Do you see these stakeholders as being the stakeholders that you would identify? Is the types of things that we want to get from these stakeholders similar to what the group was identifying, that sort of thing, or the outcomes similar to what we'd identified?
I guess, yeah. I mean, so I guess you're asking like, like the types of things we'd want to get from stakeholders is those questions you were just asking, like, yeah, did we get to your issues? Do you think the solutions are reasonable? Those types of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Does this outline kind of what we kind of knocked out here? Is this jive with what you all are thinking in terms of what you feel like needs to be collected and who you think you're trying to reach?
And I can't see the outline anymore, so sorry.
Was there a spot in particular, Stacey, you'd like me to go back to?
Yeah, I guess I would say, let me, I think I have that in my files right here. I can digest it and look at it a little bit more while you guys are talking. So I'm not making everybody look at it while I read.
Okay, I said I was not going to act as chair on this, but Hannah's hand has been up, and so Hannah, you want to just unmute yourself and go ahead, and then I'm not chairing this part anymore. Okay.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'll just jump in from now on, but I just wanted to say that I really appreciate that you put this together, Christine. I think it's a really nice jumping off point. And I was wondering if you might be interested or other members might be interested. I, for instance, would be, I would like to kind of share maybe a document that I'm kind of working on that's putting together some examples of other cities and counties, the way that they've kind of conducted this sort of outreach before. You know, I did that presentation, I think like back in the fall on Providence's kind of method. And, you know, it was a while back and, you know, maybe not the clearest as well, but I think that putting it in like a document form, along with like, you know, a bunch of other examples might be an interesting to kind of read through. So I could, you know, put that together in like a week or so and send it out for other people to read through, just so we have, you know, an idea of what other places are doing. And, you know, I still really love that model that I shared with y'all back in the fall. It was by that professor, Dr. Fitzgerald. And so she's like building off of Arnstein's model of public engagement, I believe. And so she goes through the different levels of like what it, you know, what is authentic public participation, like moving all the way from inform to consult to involve, collaborate, and like the final kind of end aim would be to like empower the citizens to be kind of co-creating policies, co-creating or making decisions with the officials. So I think it'd be kind of cool if I was able to put together something, send it out along those veins. I just don't want to take up a lot of time talking about that all tonight.
And I'm looking at this plan and I do think that this is good, Christine. I think that this is a good start, and especially the things that are exciting me, that like, you know, what do we want from stakeholders, so that, you know, that information, what are the immediate concerns? I think those are some good questions in there.
Forrest, did we ever get any feedback about whether we were allowed to use Google Docs and things like that? Because we could make them publicly viewable, but only editable by certain people. And that may allow us to work on things like this, even if we aren't, because it wouldn't be a meeting, but it would be accessible for people to look at what we're doing.
The very short answer is no. You know, I think those are great ideas and great examples, and I have not gotten really clear answers about, you know, why that wouldn't work, but I have not gotten support for using those types of tools up to this point.
So I have a question. I should know the answer, but I don't. So since this document was shared with everyone in the group, this outreach plan, and it's shared in the meeting, it's being discussed in the meeting. So now could Hannah go into that document and, you know, add the information that she's talking about? So it's building on what Christine started. I mean, at that point, that can happen because it's been shared with everyone and discussed.
Right. And then that document can come to me, which then I can send out to you all to read. But then technically the discussion can't happen again until we're all back in a meeting.
Right. By making any of our documents part of our meeting, they're public records now. But yeah, I think the easiest way is to share everything through Forrest, and then he can share, point your information to Forrest, then he can share it with the group.
Forrest.
Yeah, and so even if all, you know, if it was Hannah and several of you all working on it, it would be working on drafts, send to me, I can synthesize that or send all 4 versions out, whatever's appropriate in that case.
Yeah, or Brandy.
This is why we're so grateful that you all are going to draft it for us.
Right.
Yeah, I have been participating with the UF climate action plan process, and man, I'm jealous of Jamboard and Google Docs and all the, I feel you.
Okay, so you're saying that if people on the committee wanted to add things in or edit this, etc., they could do so, send it to you, and then, but you can't email that back out to us without.
Yeah, I can send those out. We're just not really supposed to talk about them as a group until it's viewable by the public again.
But if someone edited this, sent it to you, you sent it back out, and then someone else edited it, sent it to you, and you sent it back out, that's legit.
That I'm not supposed to do.
Oh, okay.
Do I have that right, Mike? I think that might have gone one too many back and forths.
I can't be entirely sure, but I think so. We can ask Corbin. I mean, the problem is Sunshine was designed to weed out bad actors. Unfortunately, that means it sweeps up all the good actors. So it's never simple.
Yeah.
I don't know about the multiple back and forths, but yes, anything that's sent to forwards, he can synthesize into one document, and then that can be discussed in a public meeting by the group.
And we could even do one back and forth, or so it would be a back forth back of synthesizing document, sending it out before the meeting that it was going to be discussed at, and then individuals can work on that document, send me responses and things like that in preparation for the meeting, because it will be discussed publicly.
I think that is okay.
So what do we do next with this?
It sounded like Hannah wanted a crack at it. And were you talking, Hannah, about adding to this document or kind of a different approach?
I was thinking more as like just an add-on in a sense. So what I was interested in doing was kind of writing out different approaches that various cities and counties have taken in terms of their kind of public engagement strategies. Some places where, again, like where they're really trying to center equity, being really conscious about engaging, frontline communities. And so I've just found some really creative ways in which various kind of municipalities have been able to do that. So I wanted to add kind of examples, and then maybe there's like a few other things I wanted to include, kind of probably going back to this talk that I was presenting back on in the fall, just about ways in which climate action plans are centering equity in the way they're engaging the public. So, and I mean, it's not like I wanted to edit your document, Christine, per se, but I just wanted to have some additional kind of information for everybody in terms of approaches we could be taking. Yeah, but I liked your outline a lot, to be clear.
Well, no, I like that, but Hannah, because what you're going to be doing is coming up and bringing things forward of actually how to implement this. So this is some of the things that we want to have covered, and these are the questions we have and the people we want to have engaged, and you're doing the work and pulling together resources on how we actually, and ideas on how to implement it, which is perfect.
Yeah. Yours was, I think, a little bit more, theoretical, abstract, and then I was hoping to just give a bit more like concrete kind of examples.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think what would be helpful is if anyone has any edits or thoughts on this and wants to just take a crack at it, again, this is just This is just saying, this is who we want to talk to, this is the information we want to get, and this is what we want to get out of it. So anybody that wants to provide their thoughts on that, more than what this is, which is a summary of what we've talked about before, that would be great. And then Hannah coming up with ideas of how we actually collect, do the thing, I think is great.
I guess, does anybody have any other questions about the communications plan as our next steps have been laid out? Great. Well then, Megan, I think, oh, go ahead, John.
I like the layout and the format, and I think what will give even more life to this is as we start to look at various measures, different parts of this would have we won't necessarily do the same thing for each measure. I think that as we put life into this and start looking at measures, for example, looking at energy, looking at what we would do for food security, green infrastructure, all of this would vary, but we would want to use this format where necessary with each sector that we tend to look at.
And I would just add to, or just actually kind of a question for some people. I know that at the last meeting, some of us kind of volunteered to reach out to some of the community organizations that we have like contacts in or have like a relationship with. And so I was wondering if, for those of us who haven't done that yet, if we can maybe try to do that, in the following weeks before the next meeting, like nothing, too intense, just kind of if you haven't been able to make a established contact yet, reach out, say, hey, like, this is the information, this is what we've been doing, this is our process, and we're really trying to get to the next step of really engaging, you guys. And so, answering questions, just starting a conversation, and providing a little bit more information if they need the agendas or where to join in the meetings if they desire to. I think that would be a nice step in the timeline for us as well.
I agree.
Any other comments about the communications strategies?
I'd just like to say there's actually something that's happening right now that kind of fits into this. There's a push for some solar farms being put in communities, and I've been actually working with EJCJ, that's the Environmental Justice Committee, and they're actually wanting to understand a little bit more about things that fit right into this, how you basically do things in a just manner and in a manner that communicates to a community what's going on. And part of what that NAACP subcommittee is trying to do is figure out ways to communicate to the community about solar farms and about how they're being positioned. So I think the timing is good, and I think that it's very needed right now. And following some of this format really makes a lot of sense in that subcommittee.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, John. I've been watching the kind of solar farm controversies unfold for, it's been 3 locations at this point, maybe. And yeah, it's been really fascinating to watch. And the newest one, I'm even less or even more confused, I think, as to kind of what the appropriate outcome should be, but I do think that there's been a lot of missteps and the ways in which the communities in Archer were just not brought into the conversation at all, or brought in, after the fact, or there's just been, a few consultants sort of led meetings where it's just a few residents that showed up, and I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. So I assume that ECJC was engaging with that, but thank you for bringing that up.
Great. Well, unless anyone else has any other comments, Megan, I think we are finished with this portion of our conversation.
Thank you very much, Megan. And Christine for leading that one. So maybe you all should do this more often, because this is like the first meeting that we've had where we're actually kind of ending on time. So we'll open it up to public comment. So if there are any members of the public who wish to speak, please raise your hand so I can kind of call on you in order, although it looks like it's pretty small. So. Hey, David, go ahead, please.
Hi there. What a treat to listen to you folks talk. I got a chance to listen to last week's or last month's meeting or something that on YouTube, which was kind of hilarious, listening to a Zoom meeting on YouTube. It's the end of the pandemic when that's happening, but I've been a climate scientist for a long time, and it's really thrilling to see the conversation evolve to where it appears that diversity, equity, and inclusion is kind of at the perhaps at the top of the list, and that it's just assumed as opposed to not assumed. So that's pretty exciting. At the federal level, it's pretty exciting. We all know that. $2 trillion, and to see some stuff happening in Gainesville is really great. I moved here to be with my sweetheart, and who is a friend of Stacy. So it's I'm interested in getting engaged and interested in hearing about folks, what folks are doing. I think in terms of constructive stuff to contribute, in terms of the conversation with the community, my experience with working with communities, listening to stakeholders is really important. So not just kind of presenting stuff, but I think at the last meeting we talked about canvassing, but just listening and hearing what folks have to say and doing that kind of before everything happens. So developing a climate action plan and then listening is probably the wrong order. So I don't know where listening comes into what you're thinking about, but yeah, listening is a great idea, especially to those on frontline communities and everywhere. I think what happened with the solar siting, trying to site solar arrays, which are desperately needed in communities that don't know about it or that haven't been talked to about it. It's just a huge mistake. So yeah, it's great to listen to folks trying to build a more resilient community. I came out of St. Pete, and that planning has been underway for a while. Obviously, it's on the water, and so the kind of shit is hitting the fan more obviously there. But yeah, I'm interested in how I can contribute. So don't quite know how to do that, but yeah, thanks for a constructive conversation there.
Thank you very much, David, and welcome to Gainesville. And we're really glad to have you be part of this process. And this is definitely one way to be part of it, is to come to this meeting, because this is really where the nitty gritty happens. So if you're available to listen in and contribute for these meetings, then please join us.
Great, thanks. Another 2-hour Zoom meeting, huh?
Eventually, we will not have to be on Zoom. Then we can all sit together in a tiny little conference room with uncomfortable chairs and look at each other in the eye, which is
Right.
better.
Right.
Yeah.
Better. Yeah.
I like the Austin Carey idea.
Yeah, Austin Carey would be a huge improvement. Yes. Is there anybody else? Are there? I don't know. That there are any other members of the public like running down the list? I don't think so.
I wanted to add in, I have no idea what the constraints of the Sunshine Law are. And I've never worked in the community where it is required. I intersected with folks where it is required, but boy, it's confusing. It's really confusing.
We've
As a
had 3
private citizen-
presentations about it already.
Yeah, I don't know if that one was up on YouTube yet. But the good news for you is that since you are not actually on this committee, you are far less constrained by the Sunshine Law than any of us are.
Great. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, enjoy the freedom.
That's actually a really good point. We have a couple of other citizens that are watching on purpose, just so that they can be those points that can do work of the CCAC without being under the Sunshine Law.
Stephen, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in terms of contribution of documents, at one point, maybe the meeting before last, I foolishly made a promise to deliver a document on disaster preparedness. And I have in fact done so. And now I just sent to Forest version 2.0, which has a lot of references attached and also has a paper that provides a fairly comprehensive bibliography on disaster preparedness. I'd say maybe 50% of those references are actually relevant to the process of how to plan for untoward events in the Gainesville regional area. And I think that a lot of the things that were put under the heading of flooding clearly can be expanded. There are cascading events, there are compound events, and we can expect all of those things to happen moving forward. And stationarity, in the sense of looking in the rearview mirror to see what to expect in the future, is definitely not a good plan. So I documented all of that. I developed the literature for it. I wrote it out into an outline form, and I sent it to Forrest. And I think, Megan, you've received a draft of it that was pretty bad, but it's been improved since then. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Stephen.
I received everything. I'll send it out.
Thank you. And David, I mean, I know that you mentioned expertise in paleoclimate. So, I mean, much as what Stephen has been a wonderful resource for the scientific literature, if there's literature in your field that you think would be useful, please send that on to Forrest. We've also had a lot of really wonderful resources come from community members that we weren't necessarily aware of, and that by them sending it on to Forrest, it gets to us and we can incorporate it into these conversations. So if there's anything that you want to add to the dialogue on that, please send it to Forrest. All right, so our next meeting was supposed to be April 26th, but I think it sounded like everybody was okay with not doing meetings every 2 weeks, at least in the near term. With kind of, to Amanda's point, we keep that option open for later if it turns out that we need it, but for right now, we go ahead and step it back to once per month. And if that's the case, then we will not be meeting April, what does that say, 26th? Is that what we saw? Yeah,
Yep.
We're not going to be meeting April 26th. We'll actually, the next meeting will be May the 13th. So it'll be another one of our Thursday meetings, May the 13th. Is everybody okay with doing that, with canceling the meeting later this month, and just our next meeting will be the Thursday meeting in May? That we can do like a thumbs up as a non-vote. All right, cool. Yeah. All right. So there it is. So our next meeting will be the regular meeting in May. And with that, if there's no final things to add, then we are ready to adjourn. Anybody want to speak now or hold your peace for a month? All right, we're good. Thank you everybody for a great meeting, and thank you again to staff